Alright, hello everyone. I'm making this video to address certain changes to World of Tanks and my opinions on the direction Wargaming is taking with the game. So let's get started. Alright, so I'd like to start off by talking about the implementation of the new light tanks. Now, I was hesitant to this change because I don't really think we need tier 9 and 10 light tanks, just because there's already medium tanks, just heavy tanks, just tank destroyers. They don't really have a role. Scouting in tier 10 matches is it's less of a thing than it is in low tiers, because there's already medium tanks that have those roles. And what they did with the new light tanks is they just nerfed them into the ground. So now they have the same view range as the medium tanks, so they can't really outspot medium tanks. They have a slight camo advantage, but it's not enough that they outclass, say, a Bat Chat. And for example, the Bat Chat is going to have way more firepower than these light tanks. So the tier 10 light tanks are basically outclassed. There's very little competitive use for them. So I think these tanks were very poorly implemented. I don't think they should have been added in their current state, because there's really no point in grinding to them. I have no plans on getting any tier 10 light tanks or tier 9 light tanks. Now the lower tier light tanks are interesting, because some of the tier 8s are still perfectly competitive, especially with the new +2, -2 matchmaking. I think the +2, -2 matchmaking is a great change. I fully support that. However, some are really weak at their tier, and some are really strong. For example, the Type 64, it was not nerfed because it's premium. So it's now the best tier 6 light tank by far, because all the other tier 6 light tanks, they were nerfed to compensate for their new +2, -2 matchmaker. And the T64 has the +2, -2 matchmaker, however, it's in its old state. It was not nerfed. So this basically means that all the premium light tanks, which I can only think the Type 64 and the German one, the M41 GF, are not nerfed. So the M41 GF is now the strongest tier 8 light tank, and the Type 64 is the strongest tier 6 light tank. So you're just buffing. Oh, and also the Type 62 at tier 7. So you're making the premium light tanks the strongest because you're not nerfing them, and you're giving them the advantages of the update. So this needs to be fixed. And then the tier 9 10 light tanks are just way too weak, so they should, like, in my opinion, they should just be removed, or they need buffs, so they don't outclass medium tanks, but they just have a different role than medium tanks. They have better scouting, they have better camo, they still have less firepower, but they can actually significantly outspot and outmaneuver. Where right now they're not really outspotting, so they're kind of pointless. Talk about the artillery rework. Now the rework, is the biggest change of the patch. Now there's some really big changes, like the consumables, the light tanks, those are both, and the matchmaker, those are both really big changes. But the artillery is absolutely huge. This completely changes the mechanic of artillery, and it's totally different now. So what they've done, if you don't know for some reason, is it's a new stun mechanic. Artillery, instead of doing as much damage, they have a larger splash radius, and they now nerf your crew's abilities when you've been hit or splashed by them. So the goal for this was you're not supposed to get one shot as much, which is true. You don't get one shot as much, or even at all anymore, unless you're like in a light tanker and get penned or something. However, artillery, it's more accurate, it fires faster, has better handling, has a bigger splash area, and it now stuns you as well as dealing large damage. So the problem with this is it was kind of meant to be a nerf in a way, but in my opinion it's quite a large buff. It makes artillery more powerful. Artillery can now stun lock entire flanks. Since the splash area is so big, it can splash 4 or 5 tanks at a time. So for example, in this game, if we were to get hit by Artie, say the 110 was going to get hit by Artie right now, in this this replay I'm just showing, it would stun all 3 of us here for a long time, and it's really strong. So if there's tanks sitting in a big group, artillery can hit, and it will stun and damage all of them because of this increased splash radius. So I think the artillery change could be acceptable. as acceptable as artillery is, it would still be best just to remove the whole class, in my opinion. But if the splash radius was put back to what it used to be with the decreased damage, and you can keep the stun, but if the splash radius reduced, I think it would be fair. But as it is now, you can get hit it can land meters and meters away from you, and you'll still take damage and still get stunned for a very long time. And the stun, it makes your tank, and not useless, but it decreases your crew significantly, where if you're in a brawl and you get stunned, you want to use your medkit. So it kind of forces you to run medkits on tanks, because if you're getting constantly stunned, you can't fight at a very good capacity when you're getting stunned every 30 seconds. So it really forces medkits on tanks, which for tanks like the Object 140, where I used to like to run a repair kit, fire extinguisher, and food. I can't really do that anymore, just because it needs a medkit to go somewhere. So it's kind of a difficult situation, because you don't want Artie one-shotting people, but at the same time you don't want Artie to have this really annoying stun mechanic. And this stun mechanic, most of the time it's more annoying than getting one-shot, because before I got one-shot sometimes, but it was rare because I'm a good player. I know how to avoid Artie. I'm not stupid. Like I can wiggle, I can hide behind things. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you do get one-shot, and that's annoying. But this happens all the time, since Artie is so much more accurate. It's really hard to wiggle. And they're hitting you, and they're doing more damage because they're able to put it out faster. They're not doing as much damage in the single shot, but their DPM's increased, they're firing faster, they're stunning there, and they're splashing more tanks. So I don't think this is a positive change. And it's also important to mention that, for example, look in this game. Our team has no Artie, and their team has one Artie, so I've been seeing this a lot, where the matchmaker's not balanced. One team gets Artie and one team doesn't, and that really changes the dynamic, because when you're playing in a game with no Artie, you're playing differently. You're playing different positions, you're doing different tactics, you're being more aggressive, you're not wiggling, you're not playing Artie safe. So when one team has to deal with that and the other team doesn't, it's not really good for the game. It's not healthy, in my opinion. So the whole Artie rework, I think it would be fine if they decreased the splash radius and kept the changes, but as it is now, artillery it's not really balanced. And it's alright. Let's move on. Let's talk about the new matchmaker. So I'm showing another replay here as I talk, and you can see in this replay there's non-15 tanks. Now this is not a special battle. This is a completely public battle on the NA server, and it's 13 versus 13, which is really strange. When you're dealing with a competitive game with standard metrics like damage per game, kills per game, whatnot, and awards for that, you can't really have games where it's 15v15 and then 13v13 and it's based on chance whether you get these or not. It's just not a very good standard. And these games, especially, as you can see, there's 2 tier 10s on each team and it's just tier 8s. So that means it's the tier 10s have extreme carry potential in this situation, and they affect the game much more than the tier 8s. Because when it's 15v15, you are as an individual less valuable to your team as it is 13v13. As well as this is reducing the hit point pools, and it's just kind of changing the meta in a way that I'm not sure. Like, I don't really mind playing these games, but I don't know if it's healthy to have this kind of strange matchmaker. As well as if you put artillery in here, there's just less tanks to fight against and even less hit points to deal with. And mentioning the matchmaker again, see, our team has Artie and their team doesn't. So the matchmaker's doing a lot of weird things, which I don't think it should be. It's also been balancing tank classes really poorly. Like, I've seen tons of heavy tanks on one team, and the other team is all medium tanks or all tank destroyers. Sometimes it's all purely just tank destroyers on either team. It's doing a really bad job of balancing tank classes, because if one team has tier 10 heavies and the other team has the new terrible tier 10 light tanks, who's going to win? The team with the tier 10 heavy tanks. And there's 13v13 and 14v14, which is just a bit strange. Even with NA West low server population, it's totally possible just to put another 4 tanks in the game to make it a standard 15v15 game, which is what the whole game, the whole public gameplay is based around, 15v15. So when you change it to 13v13 just on these random points when the matchmaker decides it, it's kind of strange. I don't know how I feel about it. But that being said, there are some positive changes to the Matchmaker, such as the +2 -2 for light tanks. That's good. But I'm not really sure about the new the 3 top tier and the 5 middle tier and then the rest bottom tier. That's supposedly their ideal Matchmaker, but that's just making tier 10s. When you have 3 tier 10s on a team and the rest are lower tier 8s and 9s, it's just making the tier 10s so much more valuable. Now there are 15v15 tier 10 games now, and those are fairly common, and I don't mind those. Those are totally fine. There's a lot of damage potential, and I think it's pretty fair. So I think that's a positive change, having solid tier matchmakers. But when you have games like this where it is 13v13, where you have 2 tier 10s on each side, and you're just letting the tier 10s run amok against 11 tier 8s and a few tier 9s, it makes the tier 10s so much more valuable than the tier 8s. And if you have some terrible player in a tier 10, you're totally hopeless, because you're going up against a team with like maybe a good player in a tier 10. So it's making each individual high tier player in these weird matchups so much more valuable, which gives more potential for rolls, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing. Alright, and the last 2 things I'm going to talk about are the reusable consumables and the new sort of ideology Wargaming's been going with their premium tanks. So just quickly, reusable consumables, 90-second cooldown for everything. It's fine. I think that's a perfectly good change. I think that benefits a lot of tanks that are really prone to module damage, and it doesn't punish you for having to repair your track strategically or whatnot. So I think it's a perfectly acceptable change, and it's quite a huge change, but it's just sort of overshadowed by all the other ridiculously big things they did in this update. But I think it's perfectly acceptable. Alright, that being said, let's talk about Wargaming and their premium tanks. Now, this is not really a 9.18 specific change, but something that's been ongoing. And I think it really started with the introduction, I don't know, maybe a year or something, or 2 years ago, I don't know, the Berlin Quartet. This was the first thing where things got a little bit shifty. Now, the Berlin Quartet was like the IS-2, the Cromwell B, and all those tanks. So these tanks were basically identical to their counterparts in-game. So they weren't any better, or maybe the Cromwell will be slightly better than Cromwell, but they basically were the same, so that's fine, they're the same. However, it got a little shifty when the crews, they had basically the equivalent of a female crew. However, it was a male crew, so it could mix with other male crews, and it came with that free Brothers in Arms that does not count as a skill. So basically, you got a really good crew just for paying, and you could keep buying this and you can get as many crews as you wanted. So basically you could pay to have something that's much better than you could get without paying. So this is kind of the first sort of major pay to win thing that was going on here. You could already say that the whole economy of premium account funding, premium ammo and whatnot is pay to win, but you know, that's fine, that's acceptable. What isn't really is the Berlin Quartet. That wasn't good, where the crews, but okay, whatever, moving on. Then you had things like the Scorpion coming out, where the Scorpion is probably the best tier 8 TD in the game, and it's a premium tank, and it cannot be bought in the tech tree for gold. Now, I don't spend any money in this game. I fund all my premium tanks and all my premium time strictly through Clan Wars. I have not spent a penny on this game in 2 or 3 years. So when there's tanks that are I'm a competitive player, so when there's tanks at tier 8 that are the best in the game, and you can't get them through the tech tree through gold, you have to spend real money, I'm just not willing to pay that, and it means that I'm not going to be as competitive. When you have things being introduced like the what is it, T26E5, the Patriot, that thing, it's the best tier 8 heavy tank. It's better than a T32. It's faster, has better armor, it has better gun. So when you're talking about tier 8 Clan Wars, and you want something that's a T32, you're just going to take a Patriot, but I'm not willing to pay for that. So it's making premium tanks the most competitive. Things like also the Liberty, there's a Liberté, whatever you want to call it, that thing. It's a E75 at tier 8. It's better, it's what the Tiger 2 could have been. You take a Tiger 2 compared to a Liberté, it's absolutely no match, and the Tiger 2 is what free-to-play players will get, and the Liberté is what you pay 60, 70 bucks to get, and it's going to be way better than what you can grind in the tech tree. What else is there? There's the Object 252, the Defender. Like, are you kidding me? That thing has that has armor like an IS-7 at tier 8. It's what puppies that have never played the game, they're gonna buy a $70-$80 tank, and they're gonna be competitive because no one can pen it. That tank goes up against tier 6s. They have no hope even with their premium shells. And of course, the latest controversy with the Chrysler K, and where Foch called out Wargaming for that and got copyright strikes. Like, things like that, it's just unbelievable. It is pay to win, because these tanks are better than their counterparts that are free in the tech tree. So I think the whole new direction that they're going with the premium tanks is completely backwards. And it was better what they had before. The Pref Matchmaker, where you had things like the FCM50T, terrible tanks, but they had Pref Matchmaker, so there was a reason to get them. That was more acceptable with the stupid Pref Matchmaker than this new system where it's just you pay and you get something that's better. So I think it's fine of them to want to phase out premium tanks with Pref Matchmaker. That's fine, but you can't make them better than what you can get for free without making this game pay to win. And this game should not be pay to win. That's not a good business practice. It's not good. So I don't really know what they can do, because if they nerf the current broken premium tanks, the Scorpion, the Liberté, the Patriot, if they nerf those, people are going to get mad because they paid real money. But at the same time, if they don't nerf them, all the free-to-play players are still left behind because they don't have the best tanks. So Wargaming has put themselves in a really tricky position by implementing these things in the first place. So my opinion is these tanks should never have been introduced in the game. It's not healthy. You need to make premium tanks slightly worse than tanks at their tier, so they're not more competitive than regular tanks. It's not fair. And they can still have the credit buffs and everything. They can still be pretty good, but you just can't make them significantly better than what you can get for free. It's pretty simple, and it's just a cash grab by Wargaming, and it's not healthy for the game. It's not a good thing to do. So I mean, that's my opinion on where World Tanks have been heading. There's been some good changes, but just so many shady things are going on, and just so many bad mechanical changes at the arty, the light tanks. So I really hope Wargaming takes some feedback on this and actually figures out what they're doing, and is able to go in a more positive direction. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. If you have anything you'd like to say, just leave it in the comments. I'd be happy to reply to you. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.